Oh, I guess if I unmute, that actually works better then. So now we're live.
I thought you just left me.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's awkward when I don't have an intro thing to click on. So I just started saying stuff with the mute button on. Sorry about the weird introduction there. We're live. This is Every Second Matters. This is a project that's been going on since 2013. A bunch of people after the effective grassroots activism of 2013. A bunch of us who are having conversations on the live chats like this thought, what could we do to keep the momentum going? Because we knew that there was going to be apathy. We had seen it before after other victories, and we knew that our apathy leads to people forgetting everything, and then we have to reinvent the wheel. We have to gather, and we have to figure everything out on the fly quickly. And in a response to that, we had a couple of long discussions, groups of people chiming in, and we came up with the idea of having a monthly get together where we focus on the Second Amendment, advocacy, and awareness. Nothing that you had to join, no rules other than that focus, and then individuals doing their own efforts. So some people do things, some people don't. Some people have done things for a long time. Some people do it in fits and starts. Other people just do it once or twice. It's really just the concept of appreciating and creating awareness of what our Second Amendment protects. And that can take a lot of different forms. So it's been going on since 2013. And as I mentioned, well, maybe I said this quietly off here, but what I tried to do is host a conversation like this one. I invite a lot of activists, about 35 activists out there. I'm not good at it because we don't get everybody to join. Either the links don't get out there because I spam everybody, or they're just all busy. But we send out links to a bunch of different people. When they join in, we have conversations not about what's urgent or what's in the headlines, but instead how we can become better activists and how to create awareness and how to keep the conversation going when there's apathy, and how to keep people focused and effective when all hands are on deck. So with that, I want to thank the people for jumping in today. Rob jumped in first from Tusk, Universal Settlement Coin. We had a chat last week, right? Just a couple days ago.
Monday, yeah.
Over on our Daily Gun Show channel, so you can check that out. But I asked, where would you recommend? Where would you send people for a good interview, good conversation about Tusk and what it is?
I thought our interview was pretty good, so I would send them to your way.
Right on. And then thanks for that. Then thanks for jumping in. We also got Barbecue, Guns and Barbecue jumping in from YouTube.
Good evening. Thanks for the invite.
You bet. And you want to let people know in case they don't know who you are, what's up, what do you do? Or maybe where should we send people? That's a question I should ask. Is there a good send you an interview that you did that talks about what you've done?
Well, I've got the Two-Way Women Wednesday project that I do that obviously has been kind of hit and miss. Just trying to gain traction with getting guests regularly for that. But I've got the YouTube channel. There's a Guns and BBQ Instagram, Twitter, Facebook page. So there's several different ways to find us out there. If you're looking for content and whatnot, best place to look will probably be YouTube with 3 live chats per week that I do, and just little update things that I'll post out on Instagram. And then normally whatever I post on Instagram, I just automatically have sent straight to Twitter or Facebook.
Right on. So this is June. We've had a couple of them this year, and obviously we knew some things were coming up with the consequences or the conclusions to the comment periods last year, and then with the the need for distraction, they've basically gone to the strategy of throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, I guess, or try to throw everything at the wall to freak people out or something. So it's been a crazy kind of chaotic situation since. And So then, the what we might have earlier in the year been kind of planning to work on, or talked about as trajectories or goals and stuff. I guess maybe first thing we talk about is if that stuff has changed at all. I don't know. Is that a place to start? Is anybody watching anything recently that's made them think that something might have changed in their minds since earlier in the year?
Well, I think they're going to do everything they can to regulate the snot to make it very uncomfortable and difficult for people to be in the business. I've heard from the retail FFL side, they're going to they're hitting a record number of basically life and death level kind of I don't know what they call it, demerits or infractions, and they're trying to put a lot of dealers out of business right now. So that's a big thing that's happening right now. So if that's any indicator, I think ultimately doesn't bode well for us.
Am I the only one? It's the volume. I don't know. What's something up with your mic? You maybe have it on your headset and you're talking into your mic or something. Is that just me, or does it sound weird, barbecue?
Yeah, he sounds like he's in another room.
Is that better? Should I get closer to the mic?
No, I'm pretty sure it's not that mic. Now that you've moved it, because it sounds like it's coming from like a different mic in the room. I mean, we heard you, but it definitely sounds like it's coming from a different mic. Now that you've moved.
Yeah. Are you using like a external?
How's this?
There we
better?
go. Yeah, from the other day, I knew that you had a better mic. Okay, yeah. So basically,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry, something about you were talking about the FFLs, though, the attack on FFLs.
Yeah, so they're going really zero tolerance, much to a much greater extent than they normally do, from the FFL side. So I've heard that they're really, really making it uncomfortable to be an FFL. Zero tolerance, really, really basic infractions, and they're trying to basically put dealers out of business for really minor stuff. So if that's any indication, I think things are going to go bad.
Right on. And then, yeah, that's definitely, different strategy, and one that nobody's paying attention. Well, very few, really nobody's paying attention to in any capacity or any like depth, but there's consequences of that are crazy. Because unlike pissing people off or making them wait some amount of months till a new president or something changes some rules or whatever they do to counteract some of it, that you put somebody out of business, they don't just pop back into business because a rule was changed. Like they're out of business, like their lives changed. Yeah, that's messed up. So I was asking, I guess I was trying to ask, like, has the stuff for the last few weeks, whatever, changed your strategies for being an activist or whatever for the year, but that effectively is saying the same thing, right? Like that stuff on FFLs is major enough that whatever you were doing certainly has to at least change and include that, and that's not the only thing they're doing. So I guess that's equal. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if you're in around the gun industry, right, the whole threat of regulatory or even commercial deplatforming is ever present. And I think every time, there's some kind of sad tragedy in the news, politicians are going to take advantage of that. Now, the question is, how far are they going to push it and how far are they going to get before the midterms? And then how bad will the Republicans screw up the midterms? That should be an easy win for them in the meantime. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays. But we've already seen lots of Republicans already, we got to do something kind of nonsense. And I'm very much a zero compromise at this point kind of guy. That's my position on this stuff, because giving in just lets them win and we lose. And so when you have a lot of compromisers on one hand politically, you got the NRA slowly imploding, but not seeming to really implode and not being very effectual on the other end. I'm not super excited about where things are going.
Right on. And then barbecue. I'm trying to leave it open. So is that enough there to go with?
Yeah, no, you're good. As for, kind of, is it making me change my tactics or anything like that? I'm definitely reevaluating. Just One second.
Well, I think if you're making a living off this industry in some way, I think it's prudent to, one, keep an eye on what's going, but also maybe think about what your backup plan is, just in case. What do you
You
think?
mean if like you're selling a part, or like one of the people that are selling something that they're sniffing around to make them illegal or whatever?
Yeah, I think you should. I think if you're in this space, you should have a backup plan, or at least contingency plans for less regulated parts and stuff if you're a manufacturer, or maybe even completely separate business lines that are outside the space. Now, I'm not a defeatist by any stretch of the imagination, but I like to have 3 and 4 plans. I like to plan not only plan A, plan B, but C, D, and E. Plan for success and plan for failure.
Yeah, I hear you. I appreciate the filling in for barbecue too. It sounds like he's running around. Pretty sure them
Yeah.
kids run after chickens and whatnot, so he has to always be yelling at him, make sure it's not gizzard.
But yeah, I feel like you should always be kind of reevaluating what you're doing as things are happening, because one thing's happened that's going to change the landscape. And if you're putting on mud tires and then you get caught in a blizzard, well, great. You're probably going to want some snow tires on there. So if you didn't take the time to prepare for that, then you're going to get left in the dust. So yeah, right now just kind of reevaluating, seeing where I can put my efforts and be most effective.
Interesting. All right, that's awesome. So now we got a couple of things to. I'm just, instead of making you guys like making Rob's face have to be the main thing. I'm just making this. What is this? A word, basically a word document.
Yeah, don't make my face up front. That's going to scare off people.
Well, it's just. I'm sure it's uncomfortable to have you're only one who's got your camera on, and then have me just doing nothing else on the screen. So since I've got this thing here, just a way to keep notes as we're talking. So I've got. I'm going to answer that question too, but I'll just answer that question. We got no rules. So this will be an hour, usually 2 hours. So I send out the links to like 35 people, at least 4 people that are in this room, 5 people in this room right now that are out there have links and they know it. So sometimes people jump in, sometimes they don't. But so I'm just going to dig in. We've got some other topics on reserve. I hear what you're saying. I just got done watching not 8 hours, but a chunk of the hours of the testimony in the Senate testimony committee, whatever it is, on the garbage that they're suggesting right now. And it's an empty room as opposed to, I don't know, I've watched a lot of these things in the past. So it's an empty room comparatively. And then, I mean, it's an empty room, period. But it's other times there's been actually people in the room. This time there's not that much attention to it. There's only attention from those of us who are paying attention to it. There's nobody from the other side paying attention to this at all. And the back and forth was, I'm going to put it in a nutshell, when the people on the leave us alone side brought up modern arguments, modern responses. Let's look at the mental health. Let's look at the situational causes of this whole thing. Let's look at root cause mitigation, I think is the way to say it. The other side is bringing out the old, here's what we used to say, here's what we used to say and it didn't work. Here's what we always say and it's never worked. So when you've got people that are paying attention and who are new voters, and you've got people that are indifferent and have never really paid attention to this other than to hear the platitudes or whatever, and for the first time they may be taking a look at this, they're getting nothing new from the other side. It's being phoned in, and the stuff on this side is evolving, and it's on point. So I really don't think this is a don't worry about it type of situation, but I don't think it's the sky's fallen and we're at the end of the Second Amendment here. I'm just been looking, just been trying to summarize the stuff that's been going on this year and try to do a mental exercise and think about how many times the national narrative has flipped back and forth this year to different things. The flag on people's social accounts, how they virtue signal with the flag of the thing that they're worried about at the moment, and people make fun of that or whatever. But just that aspect, how many times has that happened this year? Are they really stopping on guns and that's it? Everybody's going to hold their breath. That's it. this is what they're taking. No, they've always had guns in their line. This is what they're desperately throwing darts at a wall. This is where the dart hit this time. They're going to have very little effect. In fact, I think what's happening is they're realizing that when they say some of this stuff, they're getting responses they've never heard of before. So they're quickly needing to divert to another thing. And the tactics have been to just get upset or to start yelling, definitely to change the subject. Every time one of the modern points comes up to address, real issues, how we can actually solve some of these things, their tactic is to quickly change the subject. And if someone's really looking at this with any kind of on the fence or any kind of actual evaluation of what, I've never thought about this before, let me see what the two sides are, they're going to see the other side says, let the police have your guns, and here's all the murderers. And it's literally, I'm not even exaggerating. Pretty much every time they had the mic, they would use some sort of a justification of why the police should be the ones with the guns. And then they would finish it off with citing, there's unfortunately plenty of murderers for them to cite. And they would cite murderers, numbers, pulling at the heartstrings, pulling that same old equation out and blowing the dust off and throwing it on the table time after time. So I'm giving credit to the next generation of voters. And as they look at this stuff, they're going to see people who are paying attention and actually trying to do something. And it's not like there's an answer, but at least they're putting new stuff down and the other side ain't. So I'm optimistic, at least for that we've got, and then again, it's being phoned in. So I think that we've got very little to worry about here. The stuff that they're asking for is insane. They're basically asking for everything they've ever asked for all at the same time. So the chance of it passing would take everybody on their side and the Republicans and everything. And I think that we're just experiencing the typical, it's the dart hit our community, so we're feeling it, but they're about to pull the dart out and throw it again because they don't really want to do anything. It seems like I'll just finish it because I'm going on here. It seems like each time that the other side would grab the mic, it was to get the publicity campaign ads, the talking points, and then they'd put the mic down, and they were phoning it in. That's what I mean by phoning it in. They were just saying their same old stuff, not even addressing the actual stuff. All right, I'll shut up. Santee jumped in, DJ jumped in. Thanks for joining. Santee jumped in first. So the question was, as an activist starting out earlier in the year, how, with the stuff that's been going on lately, how have you changed your strategies? But if you want, take a second and just introduce yourself, your projects, however you want to.
Hello, everyone. I'm Santee from Santee TV. I just want to jump right in. My strategy has changed to mostly trying to focus on people who have that's on the other side, especially from this past weekend, how they were absolutely spitting mad at us, at NRA and us, that we had on the way walking to the event. They were rolling their eyes. They were cursing at us. They were doing all these crazy things. And I'm like, we can have a decent, respectful conversation. And it shouldn't have to be like that, right? But when you're dealing with people like how they were, because they were so emotional, it's like nothing you said got through to them. And so I have changed to where I'm like trying to wait until, people calm down because they're so upset, and then have a conversation as to, well, what are you going to do when you're in that situation to where you do need a firearm, or you need something more than a freaking knife or whatever. You're going to need something more. What are you going to do in that situation? And hopefully, they come up with something good if they don't want to get a firearm. But it's like they're sitting ducks. I mean, we know this already, but that's the kind of conversation I want to have with those type of people who are on the other side. So that's how I believe like this weekend mostly has started making me change my mind as to, what is really the focus, because, we can talk to other people who are like-minded all day, but there's like so many. I knew that there were a lot of people who did not agree. They do not agree with us, but I didn't know it was that many people, especially in Texas. It was like, I couldn't believe it. So I'm like, I think that conversation, I think a portion of our focus, like for everyone, should be like to reach out to people who don't think like us to see, I call it converting them, right? Well, that's what we call it, right? To convert them to think differently at some point, because doing nothing is not going to help at all. And if I'm out there and I'm with my children and something is happening, I would hope that I'm not the only one out there by myself that's willing to protect myself, my children, and if my back is against the wall, other people that's around me. So I think that's where my focus has started shifting. On top of more so with training, because we can have firearms all day, but I mean we go to the range and things like that, but to start training for situations like those, that's something that I haven't done. So it's like open my eyes up to start getting into more of training, that type of training, as far as like the school shooting and stuff like that, like getting into that, because it's definitely a possibility, because it's happening more and more. I mean, it's been happening, but it's happening a lot more, so that's my take on that.
Right on. I've been taking notes so I don't interrupt everybody all the time, but you got a bunch of good ones that I'm going to go back to. And right on. Thank you. So then, DJ, do you want to throw anything else on that one, that question? Change in tactics recently, and then if you want to tell people what you are and who you do, or wait, what you do and who you are.
I have not changed my tactics. They remain the same. I engage in conversations where I am able or think it is prudent. I do not like when folks get derisive. Being derisive creates divide. Division is not good. And beyond that, I am DJ, and I am glad to be here.
Right on. I disagree with you, so I'm going to set you aside. I'm just kidding. So that's being divisive.
Hey, DJ.
So,
hey, Santee.
Hey.
So yeah, has everybody met each other? I'm a bad host. So barbecue is up in Pennsylvania, Santee, Texas. Rob, we just talked about this.
Utah.
DJ, Nebraska. I'm in Arizona. Everybody kind of introduced themselves, so thanks for that. Okay, so we just kind of started it off with the palate cleanser, DJ, of that first question. Is anything, without getting into specifics, I guess, has anything changed in your activist goals, being an activist, with the kind of onslaught of the last recent time? We knew, I kind of prefaced it with, we knew that a couple of things were going to happen this year, and then all of a sudden a bunch of stuff started happening. So if anybody wants to, I'm going to pause here, so I'm not really trying to make it the show about me at all. I just want to play the host and hopefully keep the conversation going so that it's different than other conversations that we might have just in frustration or talking to the choir or what they say. But in order to kind of keep the evolution of the conversation going, I'm going to try to ask some questions open-endedly so everybody can put their spin on it. But at the same time, if anyone has a idea that they're out there, let me know, because I don't want to dominate the questioning here or whatever, even though I'm hosting it. In other words, feel free to be part of the show. Same thing for people watching in live or participating live here. I'll just mention Kingpin had a good point there. The people that only want cops to have guns hate the cops. And there's time in there. Right now, they don't hate the cops, but they did. And that's frustrating because it's that memory and stuff that they're playing with, and the message of the day versus what our message has been. But anyway, so I'm going to pause. Does anybody have anything they want to throw out to the group that we've got now and the audience that we got out there before I keep going?
Yeah, I think someone left a comment saying don't debate with protesters. Absolutely, but at some point, like how do we come to the table and talk to those type of people who are willing to, take a step to go protest with posters and they're doing all of that, but won't, take the time out to really try to see where we're coming from. At some point, I feel like we have to kind of like meet them in the middle somewhere to, start a conversation to hopefully get them to change their minds. Like, how do we do that? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to get to? Like,
Oh yeah.
how do we start having
I
that
do.
conversation without it being so,
Well,
heated?
So I hear what
Stampede,
you're
the way that
saying. I think at
sorry.
the time, well, I'm gonna let DJ go, but I think at the time when they're actually pissed, that's a tough time to debate them. But you can have a conversation. You can learn. I've been at these things with 18,000 people that were pissed at Trump, and they called it an anti-gun rally. Some of us showed up, and I kept my ears and eyes open. Eventually, opened my mouth, and I learned I'm not good at being an advocate or an ambassador in a riot, or it wasn't a riot. I shouldn't say that. It was just a big, loud 18,000 people getting mad at Trump type of thing. And it was way before any of the other stuff. This was just a long time ago when Trump was president and everybody hated him and they didn't like guns. So they had a big protest and we went there. And like I say, I learned that I'm not good, especially in that environment, but even just having a conversation with somebody who isn't playing devil's advocate with us, because normally we're talking to ourselves and somebody's playing devil's advocate, but when you truly hate rights and you truly can't understand anything good about a property that somebody else might own, like that's a whole different conversation and it happens quick. So I hear what you're saying. So I'm going to just throw in there, at the time, it's probably not a good idea to have a debate, but you can have a conversation. You can learn, get yelled at, in other words, without taking offense. And then I'm just going to throw out there, maybe have something like a very vague card, like a card that says, I'm on YouTube, and that's it. Like no contact information, just like meet me in a public place. And if you really want to talk, like hand that to the person that might be quiet, not yelling at you. Say, hey, if you really want to talk, let's do it later when it's not heated, and let's do that. But I think I'll leave it to ensure other people have answers to that one, but that's a good one to start off with. Thanks.
Well, see, I don't know.
And one of the things about what Stampede was saying is that meeting in the middle is a difficult thing. And there's a comment out there from Kingpin saying, don't go to their table, sit at a normal person's table instead. Now, in the midst of a protest, in the midst of, the signs and the vitriol and the emotional ping that everyone is on, or at least the protest side, right? And there's an effect that it has on us. It changes how we think and feel about things. And that's what Giaz is talking about. So that meet in the middle is going to be rough as a handshake. That is usually what we will extend when we meet somebody for the first time. If that's your group, right? A handshake. That is a literal meeting in the middle, Santee. So the extension of respect needs to be maintained. But DM Foss gave me this about a week ago, and we were talking about some similar things. He said, you can't debate emotion. I take that also to mean and to say to me that you can't debate the emotional. So that already having been said, to the rest of the panel, what I do, and when I introduce myself, having said that I do what I have always done, or at least in the last couple of years, that's what I'm going to keep doing. I think that, for me at least, is the most responsible way. And that is to have conversations when they appear, not forcing them. And I'll shut down right after this. And that is, I don't like it when I see other people spinning protesters up, tossing insults their way, mocking them, laughing, that sort of thing. Kingpin is out there with another comment that makes me feel that way and want to express that. I just recommend, don't do it. It not only makes it worse, but it makes you look like a fool and makes the rest of us sometimes, by the logical extension, also foolish. I'm out.
I think that's a good plan. I find typically when people that have a really strong emotional opinion about something, you're rarely going to change their opinion. And it seems like the more vocal they are about that opinion, meaning they're more public about it, the less like they're going to walk it back. Because when someone makes when people are, come out and make a very strong personal statement about something, they're now putting themselves in a position where they're backed into a corner socially. So people don't like being wrong, and people don't like going through and trying to what's the word I'm looking for?
Like justice. position on the spot. Or,
People don't want to ever admit they're wrong, and so if you are very publicly opinionated about something, and then you change your mind, if you've already made a bunch of declarative public statements, I'll give you a great example. If you know the most unreasonable people about politics are the ones that have a sign in their yard during an election, meaning that they're publicly putting their reputation on the line to put a line in the sand and publicly demonstrate that opinion to their neighbors. Well, those people won't back down from that opinion because they've put themselves and their reputation out there behind that. Even if they might want to change their opinion, the fact that there's now potentially social stigma that they might fear or ridicule or whatever you think about, these are very ingrained psychological concepts. But I think that when people are making super strong opinions, you're rarely going to change their mind. It's best just to not interact with them on the subject typically.
that's a good point. Like, in other words, it's an indicator. They would have never put the sign in their yard if they weren't rigid in thought or something or at least it's an indicator, probably, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, if it was a quiet opinion, you're more likely to change it. But if you're just talking to one buddy, well, yeah, maybe I did change that. Yeah, maybe. But when they're like, I hate F, Y, and Z, and I put it all over social media and I put a sign in my yard, even if you have a change of heart later on, you're not going to change it because you have too much on the line now, and people might think you're a hypocrite or wishy-washy or something. And so there's all these social kind of pressures around once you've made the declarative statement to double down on that statement rather than walk it back.
So barbecue, we're still going off of debating with protesters or alternatives to that?
Yeah, no, honestly, I don't think that debating with protesters is necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, it can be. There's a lot of things that have to be taken into account. One, you need to read the people themselves and see, is this a powder keg waiting to blow? After you do that, if you say, we should be fine, you go in there, don't be looking for the most emotional people. As DJ was saying, you can't debate emotion. We've said this many times on Amphi. And when you see somebody like that, personally, I think it would be almost disrespectful sometimes when they're that emotionally ingrained to be like, hey, blah, 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 crap on what you think. And, they're so emotionally ingrained in it. Nothing you say is going to change their mind. And honestly, you're probably just going to be more offensive to them, which is going to detract from what you're trying to accomplish in the first place. So,
yeah, not like you're worried about hurting their feelings. You're just saying you're not going to have effective communication if you're hurting their feelings.
Exactly. So then, just find somebody you can go up to, like you just said, you stick out that hand, you have a handshake, and just create a little bit of small talk. The biggest thing is you need to relate to people to, make them realize, oh, okay, maybe this isn't so bad. Now, are you always going to be able to find that thing to relate with and, a couple sentences and back and forth and before you dive right into things, because some people might sniff you out right away. There's a lot of things that can happen. I think one important thing is, though, there's a difference between a conversation, there's a difference between a debate, and there's a very big difference between those two things and an argument. And when you start losing control of your emotion, you've gone from debate to argument, and you've lost.
All right. I don't want to keep it on this. Oh, am I cutting somebody off? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that that I agree, but at the same, well, not this. There's no but. If you don't say anything, right? If they're doing that, you don't say anything, you don't reach out to them. Everybody goes back into their corners thinking the same. So that's the only thing I'm trying to how do we maneuver this? Like we're stepping on eggshells, kind of. To I don't know. I guess it's the same. Like when I was growing up, my family, some of them did not like firearms. My sister, last year, I think it was last year, she finally went to go shoot with me, which was great because she was one of the main ones that would say, you don't need a firearm, right? But at the same time, she knew that it's needed. So I don't I want to have that discussion with like I keep saying, I want to have that discussion with people who do not think the same, but I don't want to be so harsh or so, you know, just I don't want it to be a confrontation with them, and that's what I'm trying to like tread lightly, try to get to with different people.
I think like at NRAM, that has all the processors outside. Like, say you're gonna weigh it into that, and go and try and spark conversation, and just see what people are saying, what they think, things like that. So you go up, start a conversation with somebody, say, hey, you know what? After talking to you a little bit here, I can tell we have opposing views. This is what I believe. Do you think we can have a conversation and be civil and open-minded? Because I want to see things from your point of view, but in doing so, I hope that you can show me the same amount of respect, and we just have a good back and forth here. And I'm not saying that's going to get you the desired results, but probably be a good way to try and approach it.
Okay.
I mean, if the desire really is to, go out and make contact with a protester of something that has an opposing view of yours, if that's not the goal, because I see it as something where that would be a good time to do something like that. A lot of times people talk about, oh, I would love to have a conversation with people, but I'm in this same echo chamber all the time, and how
do you know who to reach out to on the other side, or where or when to reach out to the other side, which group to ask for an ambassador from? So you're saying the people at the rally or whatever, we're just using a rally because that's, or a protest, I guess, in this situation, is some kind of public gathering. Let's just call it a public gathering, then we're not putting connotation on it. So I'm just cutting you off because I want to throw a couple of things in there. I think it was Tony Simon I want to give credit to, where he says, if you only go 50-50, what you do is you end up going to the middle ground and yell in your point of view louder and louder and louder. And honestly, that's all we ever do most of the time. Most everybody always does this, but that's just how we are. Here's my position. Here's my position. Here's my position from 6 different angles. Here's 6 different volumes, 6 different flavors of my position. But what Tony's concept was to go 60%. Go over to their side a little bit, enough to be able to see their point of view. What is it? Understand what they're complaining about. And once you understand what they're complaining about, you know what they're not complaining about. And if they're complaining about, in this case, they'd like to see less atrocities, we can agree with that. We all know that. So if that's truly what they're interested in, 80%, and they've been told our property is the problem, we can sidestep 80% of the issue by coming up together with something that solves atrocities.
The thing is, most people, and this is the same with other political wedge issues on the conservative side. Like, and I think you make the most sense is like, what problem is we're trying to get to the root cause problem we're trying to solve. If we want to say we want less dead kids in schools, yeah, who's not going to agree to that? But most people that I'm finding that are anti-gun on this issue, that's not their focus. Their focus is passing a law because they assume a law is going to accomplish some mythical, impossible goal. And so when you try to start talking to a lot of these people, they're just like, we want a ban. That's where they're starting from. We got a ban. And you can point out
from their side, we need a ban, and here's why, right? Like, here's the solution, here's the problem, here's the solution. So how do you solve that? Same as anything, you got to educate them either to the negative consequences of their solution, quote unquote, or to the other options that are out there. And that's what I see is happening in the bigger debate, like from my perspective over time. I don't want to say the bigger, but just in the national debate over time, the nuance on our side is developing, and I see very little change other than to bring more to the table, but they're the same stuff to the table on their side. But Oh, I was going to say the 50-50 thing was just the idea of understanding their position so that you have a better ability to communicate with them. Because then we're not just yelling our position. We can say, I understand your position, and this is why I believe there's an alternative to what you're suggesting to me. Here's my position or something, right? And then the other side of it was, hopefully Barbecue can hear this, or I'll repeat it to him, because I think this was for him too, because he's the one who was he's the one that was an advocate of doing something when the cameras were there. And I think, or excuse me, when the protesters are there, like when you have access to the protesters. And my element, or what I was going to add to that, is what about the cameras? Because we're very rarely having a conversation, especially at a protest, with each other, right? With the other person. Yes, that's happening. You're having a conversation with that other person, but I'm assuming most of those people are there because the cameras are there for national media. They want to be on TV, or they want their message, their position to get coverage on TV. So if you're having a debate, more than likely than not, either some level of camera, right, with some level of reach, I should say, is pointed at you and it's being recorded, and that could go viral. So having that conversation, what's the win? What's the pros, cons of having that conversation on the spot with someone who may or may not be really upset, and then it being live and then being recorded and then being, like you say, that I can understand that. Oh, I'll shut up. Go ahead.
No, well, all of the Tony Simon riff that you provided there, I think that one of the most productive parts would be to recon their views. If you're listening to the opposition, and I mean listening, that means providing them the forum to express what they feel. That will take a lot of the gas out of it. A lot of the vitriol suddenly gets to shift over, and it is about, well, I'm saying these things. The shouting seems to go away most of the time. And I'm not talking always the literal as it might be at a protest, but since protest is where we are right now, sticking with that rush of blood, that passion that is there in everyone, that's the heart of their positions. So you can't go out. Anything you say is going to be considered to be pejorative. It's going to be because you are there. Each side is going to feel so much of the wrongness of the other that calmness kind of can't exist, or is very rare to do so. So it is not the time, in my estimation, Wish Barbecue is here, to be a proselyte, to go and proselytize, to try and convert, sort of thing. It's not a point of conversion. I don't think that's going to be productive, and I step to the side.
Right. Like, what can you say to a bunch of people who are mad about different things? Right.
Free lunch.
Go ahead.
I was going to say free lunch. People, if you can get people to eat together, they can talk.
Oh, I think that's actually an answer. That's cool.
No, and this is a trick, believe it or not. This is a trick I learned from a lawyer, because I work for lawyers in my day job. And this lawyer's like, look, if something seems really tense, bring food. Get people eating. It always chills them out. And you know what? I've seen it actually work a few times. So maybe that's the answer. Maybe we got to get people literally eating like potato salad together or something.
Hopefully that will work. But if we don't, that's what I'm saying. If we don't go out and talk to them, then what they hear, and everyone's feeding off the emotions because this was a horrible, horrible thing. I believe that it causes that side to grow more, because if the person is like on the fence about it, right, and we don't reach out to them and we don't say, hey, look, that was a horrible situation, but this is the reason why we do need them, and we shouldn't let them take them away. I feel like if we don't say anything, that it causes them to like really just go along with the other side. That's what I don't want. I mean, I can't control everything, but y'all know what I'm talking about. And if this is not the time, when is it?
So wait, I was going to say was Santi. So what you're saying is, and I understand this, and this is where it's hard for me too, is that if there's people that are on the fence and they're only hearing the very biased one side, they're making up their mind without hearing the other side, because a lot of people don't go out of their way usually to get both sides of an argument, especially when it's emotionally charged, right?
Right.
That's a tough one. But I think there's also, sometimes you got to pick and choose. I think, going to a protest, you're not going to change a lot of hearts and minds at a protest, because people who go to protests have already self-selected their position. Typically, and people who go to protests are usually mad, and they're just going to express that anger. And I'm not sure that protests are the great place to try to engage in that dialogue. But I'm not the best activist out there, so maybe I'm just wrong. But
No,
that's
Rob,
kind of been my experience.
I think the point you were making about being able to share. So is that sharing, and what is what is an epitome of that kind of sharing on equal terms? And that is sitting around a table. I mean, you can go back to MLK in the "I Have a Dream" speech. There, he's dreaming that former slaves and former slave owners, sons and daughters of slave owners, will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. So that brotherhood, if we shift to being American, I mean, that's such a broad concept. The idea that we would be able to sit at that table is difficult to see. But literally, Rob, if it's potato salad or chips or whatever it is, if you have something to offer more than your words, the words that are trying to sway, the words that are trying to shout down, any of those more, I'm going to put quotes around this, evil ways of that approach, I think that is something that reflects the milk of human kindness. It is understanding. It is peace. It is the things that promote the dialogues that do make consistently better attempts at change. And I stepped inside.
So, and almost then, I'm wondering, maybe we should do an experiment. Maybe we should have some kind of round table, but the focus of it is your stuff in your face. And I mean, seriously, I wonder if that would actually work.
Now, are you going literal or figurative there? Are we stuffing our faces
Literal.
with information and dialogue just like to get fat and happy? Okay, you got to rip on that further, because I'm lost.
No, like if so, the theory is, if you have people that are very contentious or in opposition to one another, feed them. It'll de-escalate the tension. So I'm wondering if we could just get people at the table and have like a barbecue, and like, you know, then have discussions literally while you're eating on a table with people
I dig. And I'm thinking now, to riff off of what you were just saying with the, first with the potato salad, then we're at the table, and then we are really actually feeding. What about the watering of protesters? We're talking about NRAM. We can step to the side after I make this if we need to, but how about offering water? Any extension of kindness that you can make. It doesn't have to be that you're seeking the understanding about issues. It could be you're seeking the understanding of two human beings. We're walking the earth, and your life is as hot and miserable as mine is right now. Here's some water. And I step to the side.
Well,
I
in
think-
the way that there's that thing going around right now that's I won't even say it because I don't want to mess with people's heads, but there's that thing going around right now where that girl goes out on dates with people, and there's like a viral from that. But if you did that, you get somebody to go out and eat somewhere at a restaurant across the table from another person, and the way that Riding Shotgun with Charlie does interviews within the industry in the car with that format. What if somebody went around and did interviews with people eating dinner with them? Let me buy you lunch and talk to a. And then, like Rob's saying, instead of having a bunch of people, because that's tough, because then it could turn into a food fight. No, I'm just kidding. Just
just a real fight.
Yeah. No, but just to get, like you're saying, people eating, and then, well, like you say, I think that's a mammal thing, right? You're more comfortable when you're eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I dig that.
All right. Well, I was going to ask Santee, since you were actually there, and you are bringing this up and brought it up as the first thing to talk about. I'm guessing because you experienced it. A couple of different things I'm going to ask you about. First was what I'm going to ask you let me tell you what I've heard about the protesters at the NRA show, and then let me know if that's the way you perceived it, and then riff on it all you want. But I heard that there was a bunch, but not more than normal. Would say like a lot compared to some shows, but not so many that it was abnormal, and that about half, depending on the time, but about a half of the people that were there were media looking at the protesters. So it was like half and half, media looking at the other half who were there for the media. So it was a bunch of cameras, and that thirdly, the people that were showing up to protest weren't necessarily all on topic, and that some of the signs were, you know, on other agendas, that they may have showed up because they wanted to get national coverage for the agenda, or just had nothing else to do and showed up because they hate the NRA and they also hate this, you know, also want this other agenda. So anyway, that is that a good perception, or give us some insight if you would. The anti-2A people could pay for it. Adam's saying it doesn't have that kind of cash.
Well, the tail end of what X Adam 1 is Santee comes back maybe. The second part of what he's saying, how about we walk and talk? Like, hey, let's take a walk.
Talk. That's where it is. Okay.
Yeah, walk and talk.
That's Rob's idea of eating, though, the getting the comfortable eating part of it.
Yeah, well, and know he's like X Adam is kind of joking there. I don't have that type of cash, and maybe it is literal kind of thing. But the walk and talk, I kind of like that as well. Hey, how about we take a walk on this? That could be both a literal and a figurative. Going to roll around with this idea. Going to take a walk. One of those things where you are then equally yoked. You're the walking side by side kind of thing. Not trying to press too far ahead. Not looking over your shoulder to have the other person consider themselves to be lesser so. But a literal walk is actually not a bad idea. The calming effect of that could be effective itself. And I step to the side.
All right, now you go to a street food vendor, and then buy some kind of street food and walk as you're eating street foods. Talking about 2A.
Put those two together. I like it.
Doing parkour and fireworks at the end.
I have to exempt myself from the parkour, unless it's just like hopping over the cracks in the sidewalk kind of thing. But yeah, and there was a lightness in your conclusion there, and the inclusion of the parkour, having a sense of humor, how important that is, and not being, don't let your goat be gotten, sort of a thing. You don't have to keep the complete straight face. Smiling is a good idea. Frowning and shouting, that's vinegar. That's not the honey. And
all right. Well, I had a couple of things to ask Santee. I don't know if she had internet issues or just had to jump out. I let people know when I send the link that I'm maybe doing this for an hour or two or however long, depending on the conversation type of thing. So I encourage people to jump in and out. But she didn't say anything, so it could just be an internet connection. We'll see if she jumps. Oh, there she go. There she go. So I don't know if you heard. Thanks for jumping back in. I don't know if you heard what I was asking about the protesters.
Yeah, can you all hear me now?
Yep, good. You're good to go.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of people out there, and they did have a lot of media, but it was enough. Like at certain times of the day, like when you got there really, really early, it was just a couple of them, and then like in the mid part of the day, like when it's really, really hot, it had like quite a bit were out there. And then towards the end, I guess they were, starting to leave, but I don't think they were organized either. I think it was just, people were coming out because they wanted to yell and scream and talk about, gun control. So yeah, they didn't look organized yet. But I think it was also after, I think what started it was Beto. He's running for governor here. He confronted the current governor. I think y'all know about that already, but he confronted him at the news conference, and I think that's probably what started it. And then they were outside, I believe, that very first day, that Friday. And that was the only time I saw them out there, was that very first day where, they were passing the microphone and talking about gun control. But other than that, it wasn't a really large crowd. It was they were out there.
Gizzard is saying he was there at the show too. He says, with the tone of what was said and how it was being said in Houston last week, there was no reasoning with the people at the time. Wrong time to have a reasonable discussion. You agree then?
True.
It's hard to say when you just see pictures or even video, because people are sometimes going to yell louder when they see the camera, or somebody's going to turn on the camera when they're yelling the loudest. Are they yelling because there's music playing and they're trying to yell over it and we can't hear it because the music's on the other side from us? That's it's always a filter, right? So hearing it from the people that experienced it is valued. Thank you.
They were definitely yelling at us. Well, they had some people that were going to the restaurants and stuff, and they were upset with us also. When we came out, I did an interview with some guy. He does digital. Can you all hear me? Because I don't even know. Can you?
Oh yeah, you're
Yep.
loud and clear. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
This digital interview, and when we finished, we turned around and some people who were sitting out eating on the patio, the guys, they were like looking and rolling their eyes. They looked like they were disgusted, but they didn't say anything. But I'm like, I don't think they would have been willing to have the conversation either, because at all. But there were some like people that were like walking, to the car, towards the convention center, and then when we were coming back, there was a couple of people that they probably would have talked to us, but going when the lady, she had this sign, and I was talking loud enough for her to hear me, and that was not the time to talk to her. That was not the time to talk to her, because she looked at me like if looks could kill, she would have killed me with her looks. So I said, okay, let me just go where I need to go and do what I need to do.
Now, there's got to be something though to that, right? Like like you say, it wasn't the time to talk, but now she knows that there's another girl on this side, right? And then that maybe something about her position based on maybe the way she's dressed or something about something. You gain a little bit of insight onto their side of it too, and just knowing, for example, that they're not together in one group. We know that they're not all members of some organization that's given a marching orders, or they're not all part of an organization that literally just are so passionate and care so much and really are dedicated to the idea of taking away our property as if that's the way to solve enough of the issues or whatever. But so that kind of thing. Even if there's not like a resolution or shaking hands and even a smile, right? At least there's some information going both ways. And I think that's got to be positive. I think there's a lot to that First Amendment right to assemble. And it's good to get a bunch of people on our side. We talk about rallies and the NRA convention itself. Well, the meetings and exhibits are, in itself a way for people to get together and understand what, how many people are really together, with that interest. But those rallies do the same. This many people are pro or against whatever the issue of the rally is. And that's what I'm usually familiar with, the people that are part of the rally, that are getting together because we want that optic. We want to show people that there's a, solidarity for whatever the position. But there's that optic from the other side and that opportunity for the other side to see. And anyway, I'm just stating the obvious here, but
I have an observation because I've been, one of the things I've been doing is not watching YouTube creators who are showing me the inside. I have watched what they've shown me on the outside, and it was American Ammo and Firearms. I call him AAF. He was doing a walk. It was more than an hour, kind of pacing the back and forth, just kind of showing, by his lenses observation and his commentary as it was rolling through. About halfway through, he began to get closer to the barricade that was set, by the city. And there were two moments back to back where they were things that made other people go, There was a man in a priest's collar, and AAF was, just kind of asking, so, how's your day today? Being very casual. The priest had a sign, and the sign began to sag. I could tell that by the body language that there was a dialogue this was something the priest hadn't expected. Probably AAF too, though I haven't asked him. The question came out from AAF's side. So, do you have a firearm? And the priest replied that yes, he had a Glock. And what AAF did here, I wouldn't have necessarily done, but he asked the priest if he was willing to get rid of that. And the priest kind of looked perplexed. By the conclusion of that, what became apparent was the priest didn't understand semi-automatic in its definition and the potential implication to him. A few moments later, that priest was no longer on the line. Now, I can't say that it was because of the effect of that it was a wisdom drop that sent him off to sit down and ponder a little bit. But just that moment there, that was making a point without the anger, without the difficulty. It was a simple inquiry that resulted in, well, hey, man, that's a semi-automatic firearm. And so that created the opportunity there for the priest not to feel persecuted and to actually have to take a look on the inside, to take that personal time to reflect and maybe understand the lack of understanding. I think maybe there, and I'll step aside because I think I just made a point to myself and need to consider it. And that was that last one, giving people the opportunity to go, in a realistic way. I step aside.
That's awesome. That was awesome. I didn't even think to walk through that crazy crowd. Lord, forgive me. I didn't even think to walk through. I wouldn't have wanted to. But that was a good question to ask.
Yeah. And there was a lot less of the, one-on-one. It is that, it's not a handshake. It's not the one of brotherhood yet. It's not knuckle bump at the end sort of thing, like we are of one accord. But it was just the engagement, letting people tell their stories. I'll go with at least one more example here. Pardon. And there was an older couple. I'm saying older they were like in their late 60s or 70s by my reckoning. The wife or the woman of the pair just wanted to shake her head and not engage. But the person that I'll say is the husband, I guess. He was standing about a step behind his wife on the protest line. He wanted to talk. And he said, well, hey, I'll talk to you about that. I mean, I can't give you a literal quote there, but he was willing to engage. And what he wanted to do, what that gentleman on the other side of the barricade wanted to do for the camera and for AAF was express what he thought. And it was calm, it was measured, it was metered. It had to be louder than either one of them probably would have preferred because of the cacophony around them. But another example of it, and we were talking about maybe 20 minutes ago, if you let someone express what they feel, it begins to let that passion spread out, even out, and perhaps reduce in how aggressive that passion is. So I step to the side with that.
Sorry, I've been distracted. Clover has got Tony on, so I'm just throwing a link out there to anybody who wants to watch them live. They're live right now, chatting about probably a bunch of different topics.
And with that as an example, in this instance at least, remember all y'all out there that YT channels, you can go back and watch after a program is concluded. That's something that I do quite often. If I get in the thick of one channel and there's a quark going on or a double schedule, dual scheduling, or a conversation goes long, I stay where I am and I go back to the other ones as a double back.
Saying, hey, the people that are showing up. So yeah, and then it applies either way. You don't have to watch this one. I mean, Every Second Matters, we go live. Been doing this since 2013. We're definitely not doing this for the views. My goal here, since we're at the top of the hour, we've been talking a bit about the protesters at the NRA annual event meetings and events, which is actually pretty awesome because I'm hopefully that's just what people could use right now is some insight and some focus on how to be a better activist or some strategies on being an activist. I don't know if it makes you better, but at least it gives you some opportunity to focus on the act of being an activist and some of the aspects of it from different people's perspectives and different people's experiences. But let me take a second since we're at the top of the hour and do a palate cleanse and play host a little bit. Every Second Matters is a project that's been going on since 2013. A bunch of people in conversations like this. Almost every single night in 2013 was like this. Go back and watch some of the chats. All I knew was people that were into 2A. We were all fighting as individuals, and it was awesome. It was really, really cool. And those of us that were still left at the end of the year were like, how do we keep this alive? How do we keep activism going so that we're not rebuilding the mountain, what do they say, rebuilding the wheel, coming up with the mousetrap every single time. Like, how do we keep this conversation going on the regular? And that's what Every Second Matters turned into. The concept of doing something to focus on what our Second Amendment protects on the second day of each month. So since 2013, I attempt to host a conversation like this one amongst other things, and then also promote and help shout out the people that are participating by doing things on the different social platforms that are out there or doing their own projects. Tony and Clover right now will probably say something about Every Second Matters over there, talking about 2A this evening. Is two of the national level activists out there right now. But that's what Every Second Matters is. We've got Santee, YouTube host and activist, who's creating and being an ambassador to YouTube communities. YouTubing in general, I don't know if you realize, but YouTube, the concept of being a YouTuber, it's being more comfortable with people, but still people would rather sit on the couch and watch YouTube, sit on their phone and watch YouTube. Not enough people realize you can participate. Santee's definitely an ambassador, encouraging people, mentoring people to do that stuff. So I can't thank you enough for doing that. DJs out there, I call them the road crew or the roadie of 2A, helping people out behind the scenes all over the place. And then Rob Tusk, the Universal Settlement Coin, is a cyber avenue that's focused on the next level of the internet. What's happening with the internet is happening whether or not we have our rights at risk or not, or what you think our rights are at risk or what level. The internet's still changing, technology goes on, and Rob has got to focus on that and strengthening the community with the financial side. So we've all had conversations about the things that we've done. I wanted to take this time, like I say, as a palate cleanser. We've been an hour and nobody's under any obligation to stick around, but if you're sticking around, any change in topic? Do we have something I cut us off in the middle of that we wanted to kick, I'm interrupting, or is there some other direction somebody had in mind for this week, for this month?
Well, how about as a way to keep things fresh, an avenue to keep things fresh, getting outside of the usual echo chambers. Okay, I'm subscribed to G-Webs. I'm subscribed to Santee. Rob, sorry, not subscribed, right? But here's the thing. I will step outside of my affinity zone. It's not always my comfort. I can take my comfort with me. And sometimes at the beginning, it's not quite there, but I'm still the same guy.
What's affinity? I don't get it. I get what you're going at, but I just don't. What's the definition of affinity?
Where I have an appreciation, and hopefully it's mutual, of all the, of most of the members, if not all of them in the group, wherever that group is, that
Oh,
clique.
you dig them. You dig them.
Yeah. I've got. It's like, hey, man, the appreciation for. There's another one. So getting outside of the usual echo chambers, really, it's something I really enjoy. It's key for me to keep myself fresh, because the eye rolling and the heavy sighing that happens to me in that same group of people that I enjoy spending time with, because we don't seem to break out of the typical. The usual is boring to me. I want to be challenged. So one of the ways that I ensure that I can stay challenged is I go grab something from another group. Now, it might be, say, like firearms. It might not be specifically about Second Amendment advocacy or activism, but I will jump. Now, here's something I haven't heard before. Here's a new angle. So that freshness, I try to keep it fresh by stepping out to grab something that's fresh. And when I've done that, so many times, I have found beautiful nuggets that I likely now never would have come across until I stepped out of that room and went to another one and asked what was going on there. So that's one of the ways that I try to keep it fresh. So how about keeping it fresh? How do we do that?
I think by exactly what you just said, being able to reach out to other people who don't think like us in some kind of way, help them along their journey, hopefully to come over to the 2A side. I mean, I don't know.
For sure. I think there's an example out there right now. Now, Chicago Mike might not like me like setting him up on this one, but Chicago Mike the Shooter is out there. I'm not sure that he's ever been in an E2M chat before. I don't even know if he's been to a G website, but out there right now, he's saying that he just subscribed to the channel. Now, Chicago Mike is somebody I know from going to another one of those rooms, a different spot on the web. We're talking about YouTube. I'll keep it there, of YouTube. So I know his name, and I know many of the things that he thinks and he is proud to say and know. And I have seen a few different lives where he has been, I know that that guy is ready to talk. I know that he is solid on what he believes, but I also know he has an open mind. So it might be one of those things where I say, hey, this, to that Chicago Mike or anybody else I run into, how about that at the end when I give that knuckle bump? It is like this, and I do this. Why don't you come slide over here sometime? If you leave it open like that, it's just like, you got to do this kind of thing, or you're just way too aggro or involved or over invested in what it is that we or I think is the best. It's an open invitation. Hey, man, come check this out. And I hope that many more people do. So Chicago Mike, thanks for being the person who I have as an example out there. I have an appreciation, respect, and salute.
Hey, Chicago Mike. I didn't even know he was out there. Chicago Mike.
So I was throwing a change of topic out there. DJ threw one, but I've got some here, so I'm not putting anybody on the spot. I can keep throwing some out here, but I just wanted to take a break, like say, not dominate the whole thing. But I do have another question for Santee and everybody else, but because Santee, I think it applies to more. Let me hold back on that. You're a fairly new gun owner, or am I wrong? Did you grow up with guns?
They were around, but I didn't have we had one in the house. But as far as having one myself, not until it was 2002, maybe 2003. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a long time. So no, then I apologize. I don't, know everything about everybody. I just assumed, and that's my bad for thinking that you're one of the folks who's in the last couple of years got into shooting and.
Oh, I am definitely new to the YouTube world.
Exactly.
What we would do, we would just go, through the week, because my job is stressful, and we would go through the week, go to the range, and that was pretty much it. Several times out of the month. But everything else that I've learned since starting YouTube last year, this is a totally different world. So I am absolutely new to everything else. So,
and then as far as the whole 2A and being attacked and that kind of thing, but the question's about to be that part you might be more aware of. But it sounds like, again, you've been at least familiar with this for a while. But the question is going to be for everybody. I don't know if it's a question. I guess it's just a thing that I put here in my notes, but something that I've been thinking, and since we're starting a new topic. But the idea that there are these new gun owners, the people that have bought guns in the last couple of years, and I'm guessing if they just bought their gun in the last couple of years as adults, that they probably weren't paying attention much to guns before that. They were probably on the fence, because if they hated guns, if they were paying attention and they hated guns, they didn't change their mind, right? They were probably somewhere in the middle and said, oh, I better get one for whatever reason, right? So those people, I think if they still own their gun, they didn't sell it because they're not, whatever reasons they bought it for changed and they got rid of it. Assuming they still own their gun, they bought it for whatever reason. Now it's in a closet. Now it's on their pocket, whatever it is. They're now for the first time being attacked because of their decision to buy a gun. So now all of a sudden they're on one side of a fence that before they didn't really pay attention to. And that's my question, comment. Is that relevant? Am I barking up the wrong tree here? Or is this a factor that we have this time around that we haven't had in the past? Or maybe that's all it is. Anyway, I'll leave that out there as an open question. And like I say, I don't know. I just assume, but DJ's, I don't know. I think everybody's actually, from what I understand, you guys are all kind of in the same boat. You've been around guns forever. You got more into them more recently, just because of the internet made everybody more interested in hobbies. But without, I'll just quit rambling. Is there anything to that? That all these new gun owners are now, for the first time, being accused of all this stuff because they chose to buy a gun?
Could be. I mean, I don't. I don't know. Could be.
I think there's a lot there, G. Sorry, Santee, you can just give me the poke or the slap to come back.
No, go right on ahead.
All right then. Thank you, ma'am. There's a lot in there, G, that I think is important. And the challenge to possession, the challenge to the right to property sort of things. I don't think that a lot of NGO, new gun owner, I don't think that a lot of NGOs not only have not considered it before those purchases, but during those purchases, I've heard examples of people not understanding that, yeah, there is a thing such as a 4473. No, you can't just walk in and grab something and walk straight out with it. A lot of people are beginning to learn that there are steps that are already in place, that there are examples that they have not been shown or told or at least been exposed to or taken into consideration. So there's an education that's going on with that NGO wave. And that NGOs have come in waves. The greatest one, at least in my experience, geez, going back to 2013 and some of those conversations, has been the last 2 years. And so many things that have changed, so many considerations that people have made where it is, okay, a matter of self-protection, of home, protecting the home, all of those things, they finally have made the step for, to become a firearms owner. Supporting those folks and understanding their questions coming in is another one of those things that I try to effort towards as well. Here are the resources. I'm going to drop the link to Minuteman University, providing NGOs with room to ask their questions without feeling, without being so self-conscious, without worrying about saying the wrong thing, because it is, and the wrong is in quotes, because it is when someone expresses something that has either a limited view, a limited knowledge of, providing the parts of that understanding to them makes them way more confident in the choices that they've made. And I think that is one of those keys, engendering confidence in citizenry. And I step to the side.
I agree, because a lot of people have seen on the movies, they just go and pick one up and, that's it, or, they can do all these different things with them, or these video games. Even with, my experience growing up, a lot of people, they just got them. They didn't go through the proper procedures to have one. A lot of people who I knew, but now they're learning more about what they need to do. So, I think that has opened up, the last couple of years has opened up a lot of people's eyes to start, doing a little bit more research. Even, yeah, let me leave it at that. It's opened up their eyes to do a little bit more research, and besides just what they see on the TV and stuff like that.
Well, and Santee, I think you're a great example. G has already pointed it out, of a channel that has come up and when popped on the scene and grown, and that NGOs really felt comfortable. I mean, I've been around your channel, almost since its inception.
I could say an NGO. I don't know. I know what you're saying, non-gun owner, I think, but I think
new. I did offer that as but I'll do it again. NGO, new gun owner, someone who is new to firearms.
It sounds weird. Somebody that's listening to this, like, what the heck is an NGO? Because there's a lot of people that condescendingly call people things like that. So that's
okay.
It sounds goofy and weird. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, I'll refrain, and I'll shift over to this. I have always enjoyed the each one reach one or each one teach one aspect of new conversations for folks like new gun owners. It's really something where anybody is new, where they're exploring their interests. If you can take without being extreme, without that kind of that know-it-all sort of thing, again, providing folks with the ability to be educated, to be informed, those sort of things. And if each one does reach one, they get the opportunity to teach one. I'm going to suggest that everyone do it responsibly. If you start to get outside of your bailiwick, if you're outside of things that you really know and understand and can back up, that's where you need to stop. Because too often I have seen either bad info or questionable views attached to information. The information needs to be clean, in my estimation at least, and I can pass it back.
Well, somebody's got something that just made me think of, like, back in the day when there's like initiations and rituals and traditions and stuff that would be basically to ensure people really wanted to do something, right? Like, hey, you sure? Because you're gonna have to go through a bunch of crap to get to this thing, or you know, we're going to make sure you really want to get to here because there's a lot on the other side of this that you're obligated to, right? And there's to get a lot of negative because they get out of hand or, you know, they take into extremes or whatever. But when you were saying that, I'm thinking to some extent like a hunting club. Let's think a bunch of people that are going to go hunting and they got to figure out some way to like figure out if this person who's somebody's buddy or somebody's kid or nephew or whatever it is, like, hey, we're going to bring somebody new hunting. Okay, you know, let's say you're hunting like in one of them bird huntings where you've, you know, got the potential if somebody's not paying attention, something dangerous could happen. So, or a deer hunting and somebody's not paying attention, it's even worse, right? Well, back out here where there's rifles, back where it's shotguns, maybe a little different, but whatever, you know, like you or pig hunting, that's got to be chaotic too. If somebody's reckless or weird or just not part of the, you know, mindset of the group, then they may not be a good fit for that group type of thing. So to some extent, some of the, I'm gonna call it initiations, you know, has bad connotations sometimes, but you know, these initiations were to kind of what's the word I'm trying to think of, you know, but like weed people out, make sure they're the person for the group, like I was just explaining. But now what you're suggesting is removing that and bringing a bunch of people in. I just wanted to say with that framework, I'm going to say you kind of want to have, I'd rather have a whole bunch of groups that, is it vet their participants? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to just say, hey, everybody's welcome to the party, because we're talking about some dangerous stuff. We're talking about some stuff that has some responsibilities and obligations to it. So it's like, you know, there's 3D printer people, there's high-speed PCC shooters out there, right? There's people that collect. I want everybody to be paying attention and to be like, when somebody comes up and is like, oh yeah, what about these 16, you know, things? Or how about, I just need, you know, to know how to, I don't need to know how to land. Can I put it that way? Is that offensive? You know what I mean? Like, when there's some, hey, what's going on with this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to be just like, hey, everybody sit down at the table, it's good to go. Like watching TV or something that has no consequence, right? Even like raising dogs. Nobody's going to be like, hey, everybody just raise a dog. Like a whole bunch of people are going to be like, oh, hell no. There's like a whole, you know, you got to qualify to want to have a dog. There's a lot of responsibility there. The dog, other people, right? The whole optic of, you know, you want another pit bull in the world and you're going to be irresponsible. You're hurting the whole world's pit bull population there. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So I'm not saying I want barriers to entry and exclusivity or nothing like that, but I'm just saying we also want to have groups that are self-aware.
Understood. And
I'm not
such,
just picking up what you said.
right, but somebody suss it, you know, being able to suss out commitment and to what degree that is, though. I see more often than I would like folks who will dismiss another person because their views aren't quite as developed. Or here's an equation that's pretty easy.
Like novices, but that's always the thing. How do you get better if you're just always an expert? Oh, you're an expert. Sit down at the table. Everybody's going to listen to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So to me, any 2A is good 2A in another person. But I am able to recognize, and others are most assuredly able to recognize in me my novice status on some things. So any 2A is good 2A within a person, but not every version is and I'm putting quotes around it again, a good one. So fostering those sort of things, the gatekeeping that we want to avoid, though, I think there needs to be at least a modest degree of that. It needs to be sensible. It needs to be way more centrist. But if there is something about a person that either lacks commitment or you can't be solid on whether or not they have the appropriate amount of respect, it is then up to the person who is at that gate, or, you know, one of the persons who is a regular member of that group, to be able to extend and say, okay, this is where I perceive that you are. Here is where we would like to be on something. So you can at least give them a goal to shoot for, even if they don't gain admission immediately or full membership or whatever. You know, I'm starting to use different analogies and don't really want to. And okay, I'm going to stop there, but I do have an example if this has any traction. Go ahead. So there's a kind of one of the things that I see, and not a lot of people, and sometimes I can be humorless when I don't understand something. I think a lot of people also have that sort of approach, where if I feel that I don't understand something, I'm already apprehensive. If then there are the examples of things like inside jokes. This one has humor, but I've seen people stumble on this one. In the cadre that I'm around, 9mm is a joke. It's made fun of. Some people are they don't know how to take that. what is amusing to us, it's the weakest millimeter, the small, the millimeter that wants to grow up, that sort of thing. We're dogging on a caliber that somebody just bought a firearm in. And if they don't understand the context of that, it's off-putting. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't joke, but sometimes
Absolutely.
go ahead, Santee.
No, I'm sorry. I was just agreeing, saying absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. It's the same
What's
kind of thing.
hilarious about that is that I've been around this since 2007, officially, like full time, just doing gun content online, right? Being in communities and paying attention to the conversation and being part of it. And the whole reason I rag on 9 is starting back in the days of a lot of conversations with hundreds of people that were in like most of the conversations throughout the evenings, all night, all week long. So imagine an auditorium's worth of people that were going from show to show, and each show was a different focus topic, hosts and, different show, but there was the same audience all the time. Lots of inside jokes, lots of stuff happening there. And lots of we know what these people are going to talk about. You got your reloaders, you got your competitive shooters, right? You got your hunters. They're all going to have their conversations, and they're all going to have their go-tos when when they're in the table. So there's a lot of these inside jokes. And one of those things that goes on inevitably, you get enough people together and they're going to have some kind of caliber war. And then you get enough people together, they're going to have brand war. I like this brand over that brand. You're going to have all these different petty little things. And one of the things we're talking about right now is we are in every second matters. And really, if there isn't a consistent awareness of what's happening with the rights around this whole thing, then what happens is we get into these petty little bickerings, and then stuff happens and we're not ready. We're not prepared, right? It's like, oh, we bought all this equipment, but we've never practiced, so we're useless. It's effectively useless with the sniper rifle or with this, handgun that we just own. We'd have never used it before. So it's the same thing with our rights. Like if we're not activists, if we don't do things, succeed and fail as activists, then we can want to be activists all we want. We can have a book about being an activist, but being an activist, what makes us an activist. So I guess to some extent there was all this like focus on the grip angles and the new stipple job, and whether or not if you dip it in this kind of lubricant, it's better than if you have some kind of electroplating done on it versus whatever sight. There's always something that the industry is going to drop on the table to buy or to upgrade to, or to impress somebody or to piss somebody off. You know how much of this industry is just because people hate Glocks? The people that hate Glocks won't admit it, but there's like a whole chunk of the industry that's just people that hate Glocks. And there's this is the not Glock. Oh, I'm buying it. And now there's like 18 of those. So my whole ragging on 9 was to rag on that whole like petty thing. And then a couple of you took that because you didn't get it, I guess. And you took it to like be literally like, I got something against 9. But really, whenever those conversations come up, I use that as my way to say, I'm getting out of here. That's how I push myself away from the table in disgust and go, y'all are talking about pettiness when we have real issues at stake. And so when it gets into, you're saying that people are getting offended because they hear you rag on 9, it's just, that's just the nature of what, the way things go. That telegram, tell a friend, it's going to change. The message changed there. And it just went literally from where I, was raging against with it to right back where it comes from. Like you went right to pissing people off about like their choice of caliber, when in actuality, who cares? You should be able to pick up any gun you come across and use it. And if you can't, then strive towards that. Go rent a bunch of guns and see what different calibers are. Carry whatever you want, be able to use it all.
And I've been around now long enough, and gee, you usually are including enough sarcasm or maybe a second comment sort of thing that does indicate that it's not,
otherwise people get mad and give me hate letters after, like, or get really upset. There's people that really hate me because I fart around saying like, oh, 9mm.
And there's a component of that is not intentional, and I guess that's one of the things that I was kind of riffing on there, which is, people who get turned off feel that they're being turned away, that they, too often I think people think they're being turned away if they don't meet the minimum requirements. So, they become exempt somehow because of the 9mm joke that's going on, and that kind of I'm losing the words as the thoughts are coming too rapidly. But it's kind of like an aspect of hazing. And again, I'm using air quotes on a damn word. But the kind of hazing that goes, it's getting to know the in jokes, and that is a form of that. And I'm using the air quotes again, damn it, of gatekeeping. It's not the extremes of those two words or their definitions. If you can begin to get the jokes, then that's when you start to have that feeling of membership. Oh, I get this, the secret handshake, so to speak. I get that. I understand that now. Getting folks to understand that, I'm not saying as quickly, but as confidently as possible, I think does now to bump out from the 9mm group to the second to 2A activism or advocacy. It's a very easy step forward from having your views be so strong that you want to speak to somebody else. Then you're becoming an advocate. I think there are a lot of advocates out there that don't realize that term does apply to them. The jump between advocate and from advocacy to activism, though, that's less understood. That was the case with me. So what can we do about that? What can we do to show people, maybe to engender a confidence in them that, hey, not only do you have a view and it's legitimate, but when you say that out loud to someone else, you become an advocate. How do we do that? What are some techniques, tips and tricks here?
First, you got to stop using air quotes.
Thanks for that, Rob. I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Thanks, man.
That's all I had. I'm just being funny.
Yeah, I'd intentionally not jump in.
Had to let it sink in. Yeah, expressing myself, usually I'm set on maximum verbosity. I use far too many words. That's one of those things that, folks haven't, well, okay, I'll run to the personal because I'm speaking about myself. I found that too often folks just want to either deride, they either want to insult or, passively, most of it, but I'm not offered that extension. No, very few people have said, DJ, shut up. Or DJ, too many words, or DJ, you're confusing this. Your tangent has just ruined something. And I've been working on that consistently. I still am not where I want to be. So I'm going to continue to effort for something like that because it increases my effectiveness in those conversations as an advocate or an activist. Does that kind of make sense there? No air quotes, Rob.
Thank you for that.
I think as long as if you're like making a comment that people may not get, like new gun owners may not get, to at some point say, hey, look, this is a joke, or this is just a joke. And I think it's important to say that because you may not get a chance to say it later. And for people to understand exactly what you mean and what your point is. And a lot of times I can't get my point across because I have 50 different ideas going through my head. But I think it's okay to joke as long as at the end of the day they know where you stand. Like if I hear G-Web say that, I'm not gonna take it personal. Because I love 9mm, okay? But I'm not going to take it personal because I know overall what type of person, pretty much, from the internet, that he is and what he's passionate about. So it also with DJ Playnice, if you say something that I probably don't agree with, at the end of the day, I know pretty much what you're passionate about, what your stance is on certain things, and we don't have to all agree and things like that, but at the end of the day, I think it's important to let new gun owners know that those type of things are things that we're joking about, because a lot of times it will cause them to not want to come around or cause them to be misled to another area that they definitely don't need to be around. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
No, yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's something that I've experienced with, again, there's tons, I'm like DJ. When I see somebody new come along that's focusing on 2A, not guns, because there's just too much stuff. There's a lot of new gun owners and a lot of people that are comfortable and like the internet and playing around on YouTube and all the other platforms. So guns is tough to keep up with. But when people are focused on 2A, I like to watch, because I'm curious a lot of things, like what motivates them, what their angle is, and if they got something that I haven't seen before, so I can let other people know about it, right? Oh, all right. Well, I totally lost where I was going. That's what happens after live chats. I'm trying to think of 3 different things. So I'm just going to keep going and say, if we stop at 2 hours, that gives us a half an hour. And I was going to say, unless there's, I was probably going somewhere with that, and I apologize, but I'm just going because otherwise I'll just sit here for a second. I'm sure as soon as somebody else talks, I'll be able to go backwards and rewind and figure out what I was about to say there. Let's just say that it was something. I hope that was worthwhile. But if we've got a half an hour left, I want to give everybody a bit to plug whatever it is that they're working on in the near future, plug their projects that they work on, the things that they're interested in, or plug anything you might want to plug for somebody else. But just kind of heading in towards the 2 hour mark, unless I'm cutting anybody off, as I was, like I said, I totally spaced where I was going with answering that question. So I don't know if I was cutting somebody off or actually answering a question there. So feel free to stop me here. But otherwise, I was going to say, Patriot asked a question or had a statement. I think most of the time, something extreme has to happen for any ideological change to happen. I just want to throw that out there. We can use that as our last topic of the night, unless there's, like I say, some other thing that I'm missing. And then I'll shut up again. What do you think?
Absolutely. Because that's the point. That's why I feel like we should talk to the people who are protesting, not so much as when they're actually protesting, but at some point, because I want them to understand personally, it doesn't have to get to that point. Even though it got to that point for me in my life, it doesn't have to get to that point in someone else's life to where, something has to happen in order for them to say, okay, wait a minute, now I need one. By that time, one of their family members could be gone. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm trying to figure out, how do we get people who react after the fact to start thinking about reacting before, being preventative and react, do something to help themselves before that actually happens. Because by the time that person, by the time the person does something to them, they can go down the street and do something to someone else. And if they could have stopped it at some point, I think maybe we could help with this crime rate. I don't know. Maybe.
I think that's inevitable. I think that has to happen, because it does happen directly with the circumstance, like you just said. Like if somebody does say no, let's say, whatever the consequences of that, if it is lethal or if it's just brandishing or whatever it is, like somebody resists a bully or an attack or whatever it is, a robbery, right, and says no, it prevents that robbery. And like you say, it prevents a string, perhaps, because if every time you're a victim, I don't want to victim blame or nothing, but if there's nothing stopping a bad person from being bad, then they're encouraged and they keep being bad. It's no one's fault. It's just the effect of, the perpetuation of that kind of garbage. But potentially, if you stop them, even if it's not lethally, even if it's just showing them a brandishing or being aware, you don't have to brandish. That's the thing. I'm never going to be an advocate that someone has to get into an altercation to have a positive effect on the world or to have some kind of enlightenment, right? So just understanding that you have a responsibility or the right or an obligation, right? Depending on the person or the day or the situation, right? That's all of us all the time. Once you realize that and you act on it, even if it's just to be more aware, even if it's just to realize that and then nothing else. Now you're walking around and your head's on a swivel, so to speak. You're paying more attention to the world because now you realize nobody's doing it for you. And that might be because a friend had an issue or you heard something or whatever, right? Something enlightened you to that. And now that bad guy, that person who's thinking, I'm down on my luck and for whatever reasons, I'm going to prey on somebody else, for whatever reasons, right? then they're looking around and they're seeing that head on a swivel. They're thinking, oh, there's no victims here. This might not be the thing I need to do. It might be just as subtle as that. And I'm not saying that does happen every day or that's the sole reason we need to do this, but I'm saying there's some subtle stuff that's happening, and it's just being realizing, and then just having that gun in your hip or in your pocketbook or, a purse, or I'm supposed to say, and then, in a holster or whatever. Just, you have to realize, I don't want to drop this. I don't want to leave it somewhere accidentally. So you're aware of what's going on. I want somebody to come up and grab it from me. So you're aware of what's going on. And again, you're presenting that different environment for the person who's thinking about doing bad. And I don't know how we measure that, but I think there's some positive there. And anybody who can offer that to somebody else, right? Like, hey, just wake up, or hey, look around, or hey, here's how you do this, or taking somebody to the next level, the first level, you're helping. And then that person, same thing, they're gonna maybe tell somebody else, like, hey, all I did is start looking around and I realized I'm going to a different ATM, or whatever the scenario. And there's a million scenarios. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but I think there's a lot to what you just said.
I agree, G, and there's a lot of stuff to be said for what you've just offered there. So to roll back to Santee, offering any kind of education of brotherhood, sisterhood, that does, Santee, literally and figuratively increase the peace. And increasing the peace is something that I think through those steps is a really important thing, because it shows that it doesn't have to be shouting matches. It doesn't have to be my way, the highway. It doesn't have to be any of those things. Open hand, open arms, open doors. If there's less exclusion and more of that, what Rob is talking about, that literal and figurative feeding that happens, that's education. Education means informed decision making. An informed adult is going to be able to make those decisions for themselves and in a way that indicates a greater quality before any one or all of us together stepped in and offered something in our contribution on efforting towards 2A awareness. It can create that chain reaction. It is for the greater good, the more dialogue there is. And I step aside.
I mean, you got to meet people where they are, right? And I think you got to pick your battles. Here's the thing. You're not going to win everybody. And you got to remember, I think you hit it earlier about don't argue the emotion, right? But you can relate to people on the emotion. And I think if you got to come together and try to figure out and almost profile them. Like, I read a book. What was the name of this book? This book was about having difficult conversations, and I'll look it up. But it was a really good book. And basically it was a way to gauge whether or not someone was receptive to having their mind changed. And the premise of the book is, if you can't get in the beginning to find out if they're unwilling to change their mind, don't continue with the conversation, because what's going to end up happening, you're just going to make them mad. And it would approach conversations like on a scale to 1 to 10. You would try to literally interview people and say, on a scale to 1 to 10. Your mind is made up 100% or open to new ideas with a 1, but at 10, you're totally closed-minded on this issue. If I presented new facts to you, would you be willing to change your mind? Would you be more like a 10 or a 1? And they had a scale kind of thing like that. And basically they said if someone, is above a certain level, you just thank them politely and move on, because you're never going to reach them. And I think we need to have almost like de-escalation training or something for activists to, so, and why that's interesting, because you can get to so think how many times you haven't, maybe you think you're going to win someone over, and you're 30, 40 an hour, into a conversation before you realize this is going nowhere. Now you just wasted an hour. Now, if there was a protocol or a system by which you could go through and in 30 seconds, a minute or two, realize there's a chance or not a chance that you can get through to the person, so you can cut your losses and then move on. And I think that has some merit in this situation.
Yes. So you hit on two amazing things there. First, that's hacking 2A. That's my goal. That's my whole project is hacking 2A, coming up with that logarithm you just came up with there at the end. And that is doable. But that's definitely the way to approach it. Come up with a system that we can hand off to the next generation of activists to enhance and come up with 2A 2.0 or whatever, or actually it's more like 8.0. I'm not falling for that. We're the first always. But anyway, that was a great point. I didn't let anybody else riff on that. Also, relating to the emotion, kind of in the context of, in the heated situation or timing, to relate to their emotion. No one's ever talked about that before. That's, I think, pretty strong. Like that's an awesome strategy. I mean, that's ninja. Is that from somewhere? Did you just come up with that, or is that like an established thing I'm just not aware of?
No, there's a book that I listened to, and I'm trying to find it right now. So that actually went over it.
Because I would have think that if someone's when they're emotional, they're vulnerable. And if you can stay rational, then you've got the advantage there. And if we can truly be interested in helping them get past that emotion, then right, like relating to it can help us keep that position, right, and just let them get it out or whatever, and then come at them with, like you say, the appropriate kit out of the toolbox.
I found it. How to Have Impossible Conversations. Oh, I didn't even know it was him. By Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay. So, How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Decades ago, one of this book's authors, me, was discussing affirmative action with a colleague.
Stop it.
Cool. So I'm going to throw a link to Amazon.
How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Well, and Rob, that's I dig that. I'm going to have to check that one out as well. Over a year ago, I started to develop something called the 2A 2-minute drill. And it was like two different versions of the 2-minute drill. It was literally going to be a series of flashcards on one side so that advocates and activists could inform themselves of good ways to have those discussions. So the first side, XXX, that's what, XYZ, that's what the argument being presented or the view being presented is. And then on the flip side for the advocate activist, here are talking points essentially. Here's what, here's a good response for this. Here's one to have this.
That's already copyrighted, but it's a great idea since we came up with it years ago. But yeah, it's a great idea.
Oh.
No, did you really come up with that sometime? Or was that in the chat because I missed it or something?
Yeah. That was back in the DGS when I first came in. The same time that I came up with the How Did You 2A Today.
Oh, I thought you were talking about you and barbecue. Yeah. Okay, because that's Smeggy's. I'm pretty sure he was.
Oh,
around.
Smeg had a flashcard idea? I'm going to have to talk to Smeggy then. Thanks for that. Didn't know.
No, you're talking about the thing I'm talking about. I thought you were talking about a different thing.
And so, like,
remembering the one you're talking about, because that's what I was just thinking. Oh, yeah. Anyway, whatever. Go ahead. Here's the link. And if you buy the link, or if you buy from this link, you get a very small cut of the $12 the book costs.
And one of the reasons that, it's like, okay, the 2-minute drill, that's something left over from sports for me. But the literal 2-minute, plus it's a reinforcement of the 2A. But the minute clock on that, I think is really important. And that's because you don't want things to get so drawn out that there are more opportunities for misunderstanding. The list of like responses or, best ways to approach the issue at hand sort of thing, that isn't to like clobber somebody with it. They are those talking points that are supposed to create dialogue and, back to CNC Music Factory, things that make you go,
Bump, Dude, I am way too old. That's what that means.
I'm right
and
there.
You're too old too. That's what that means. We're both way too old. That we like those like notes just came into my head as soon as you said that.
Well, Rob, here's another thing, and I heard Sam T with a little bit of a giggle in the background too. I like to do it with music. That's something that we've talked about for a while as well. But music is so much more important to me than almost every other thing in the world. And so, check this. I get to have conversations with a lot of folks who are not about guns because of music itself. Now, before you think that I'm saying that music will distance people who are not into firearms or rights or anything else, music is like food. If you sit people down at a table, how are you going to amuse them when the conversations get stale? you have the music in the background. Now to go to the literal, in my experience, typically people who are into the arts are going to be liberal. So I already have almost a ready-made, there's a corral of them at a club. Almost every person that I run into is going to be someone, whether they want to dialogue about it or not, but they are likely not to have the kind of views that I have about things. And so that opportunity just to present in a context like food or music it makes things for me a little bit easier. So it's not just the predictability there, but it's also a way to establish the common ground. And I step to the side.
All right, so Smeggy jumped in. Do you want to throw anything in? I don't know if you've been listening to the whole thing or what, but you've been around for a bit. Did you want to hit any of the topics from tonight?
Well, to be honest, I actually haven't been listening. Dinner got a little more distracting, so I'm just jumping in cold here. So I don't know exactly what you guys covered. I will say that, yeah, I licensed the rights to DJ, so don't worry about the flashcard thing. You can take the ball and run with it. But anyways,
Actually, I think we were talking more like because of that whole thing I was kind of alluded to earlier when we showed up at that I Hate Trump rally, and that was masquerading as a gun rally or I Hate Gun rally. That's when we discovered that since you don't know what you don't know, and you find out really quick a lot of that when there's somebody yelling at you and you're in front of a bunch of people and you're trying to not be just a bad example and just whatever, you get kind of flustered or whatever, when there's stressed. Having some cards where you had all the different talking points on one side, and then some stuff on the other side was to give you a cue, was like a quick reference, but then also what was the idea so that you could have follow-up links, quick links on it, QR code or something, but like we really disagree on the facts here, but here's where I've assembled my position. And then that way, if you really do have somebody who's interested, you've offered them something like here's something to remember this conversation. And I care so much that I've put the stuff that we're talking about in a place where you can access it, Minuteman University. And then here's a card so that you can remember, and then have some blank space on the card. So if you need to make a note, we met at the 2A rally in front of the statue or something, or we met at the, I Hate Guns rally in front of the statue or whatever. So I think what you're talking about, DJ, is more of like a flash card, right? Like than what we were talking, like a cue card / here's something to hand off to someone who's maybe a new friend, maybe someone you're going to, like what maybe the UT was talking about earlier too, like maybe I was using as an example there, something you could hand off that just says, here's my basic YouTube channel, like not my email or anything, just, here's a way to say hello to me publicly and contact me, but then maybe.
Well, you're roboting quite a bit. That last 30 seconds or so was kind of hard to run with there. So while you gather that back, mine was like a synthesis of the two. So I am really pleased to know from this dialogue today that I have, what it does is it renews energy, So thanks for that licensing agreement there, Smeggy.
yeah, well, I'm only half of it or whatever, but yeah, definitely that's something, because what ends up happening, especially if you're arguing with someone like in real life, is they did their, quote unquote research and you did your research. And we all know that you can make numbers say whatever the heck you want them to, like statistics and whatnot. And so if it's someone who's actually decently open-minded, like being able to reference to say, listen, man, like here, take this card, and then you can look it up on yourself, and it goes right to CDC, or it goes right to, FBI crime stats, or like something that you might not want to argue with. Like, I'm not saying, oh, just the NRA said it, therefore it's true. Like having the facts to back yourself up. And then if I can just kind of segue that a little bit to something I did want to talk about, was that type of thing would have been very useful last night. I don't know if any of you guys saw on my Instagram, I stumbled across this channel that I watch on YouTube that has nothing to do with guns. And they were having like a gun conversation because like the dude lives in Texas. He had a couple of his buddies on and his son was on. And the four of them were all talking. And I really enjoyed it from the fact that they all seem to be like gun owners, but not like super 2A. And there were definitely times that they said some stuff that was, like very cliche. Like they were kind of him and hawing, like maybe red flag laws would be a good idea. And, stand your ground laws, or like a license to kill if you feel scared. Like some of the talking points that we've heard from the anti side. And I don't think they were trying to be anti, it's just that was their understanding. And to me, it was very enlightening to hear like how these are regular people that do not do this all day, every day, like, most of us do. Like I can, counter most of those points in my sleep. Like I've heard that so many times from Bloomberg or whatever. It's easy to be like, I already know what's wrong about that. But it was still kind of interesting to hear their point of view. And I'm hoping the kid, because he was like talking a whole bunch, and they kept trying to say, okay, well, let's wrap it up. You have one more thing to say. And the guy went on for like another 20 minutes. So I reached out to him and said, if you ever want to come on my channel and like talk about 2A or guns or whatever, like you're welcome. And I think that's a good like middle ground. Like I think he's savable is my point. Even though he kind of agrees with background checks and he kind of agrees with maybe waiting periods and like different stuff that sound reasonable, but we all know is not, I think he's savable. So that was my Every Second Matters adventure. It technically kind of happened last night, but I was in the comments like going nuts trying to correct everything and trying to point them in the right direction that they can figure out for themselves why they're wrong. But those are the kind of conversations I like having. I have those with regular people, like people I work with all the time. I'll hear someone say something that's not quite right and be like, actually, da-da-da-da-da-da.
So you're the guy. You're the actually guy.
Yeah, if you say something wrong about guns around me, for sure. I am the guy.
It's Meggie. I really like the MG. I'm not sure where it comes from. I like the idea of them, like my flashcard thing. Sorry, Smeggy. That literally there is a literal takeaway. It's not just a conversation held, but instead of trying to bang all the points on the back of a card, all the talking points, you get to send that along with them. And your riff, Smeggy, of including the links and whatnots, that's beauty. Because if it gets, go ahead.
One talking point per card though, so you have like maybe I don't know, not that many, but you have like 10 or something, right? Like of talking points that people might have that you've set up some kind of, we have set up some sort of research or presentation for, and then that way you're not sending them with like, here's the same thing I give everybody and it's a list of everything I've ever said before, but instead we were talking about baseball. Here's the baseball link. We were talking about why, I don't know, some things, an issue, and here's the card about that issue, so that you'd maybe have, a couple of each in like these business card holders or something that people have. That's what I use at SHOT Show or something. I'll have like a business card holder with a bunch of my business cards in it, so I don't, so you're going to run out giving them to people. So you just have to have a couple of those business card holders full of business cards so that you can re-up the one that you're dishing them out with, right? So you have one of them business card holders, so basically a wallet, and then you maybe just do that. What am I saying? Just have a wallet, and instead of having a bunch of credit cards in there, you put a couple of these cards in each slot, and then, right, you've got them available. You never know when you're going to have that conversation.
And I find if you end up giving them the whole wallet and there's money inside, then they'll just agree with you anyways. So just always hand over your wallet every time you're talking to an anti-gunner, and they'll change their mind. Because
so the 2A $20 bill.
So, yeah, Bloomberg pays the protesters, so just pay them better.
No, that's a California. That's a California.
One thing that
I'm gonna have to bow out. I'm turning into a pumpkin. I appreciate what you guys are doing. It was nice talking with y'all tonight.
Yeah, right on. It's hitting the 2 hours. So thanks for jumping in. Appreciate you jumping in.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it is getting the 2 hour. I don't want to keep it going all night, and we're literally just hitting the 2 hour right here. So let's take Rob's cue as a wrap it up indicator. And thanks everybody for showing up. I'll just introduce Rob again on the outside there, or going out there. He represents Tusk, the universal settlement coin. It's cyber coin in the with a focus on the firearms industry. So when we have issues with financing or money issues, whatever, I guess bank issues with gun shops or with purchases and stuff, this is a potential alternative to that, and it's being created or it exists with that focus. So Rob's been in many interviews out there talking about it with people in live conversations. So lots to learn and lots to find out about, lots to learn about cyber, I guess, and lots to learn about Tusk specifically. But he's doing a pretty good job of getting it out there and, again, being an advocate so that when it's not if, but it's literally when the internet changes over to the next, internet changes all the time. You know, phones go from on the wall to little things we carried around to flip phones to, I guess, big things we carried around to little flip phones to eventually smartphones. You know, the internet changes too. And as it changes, you know, the next will come. And if we want the firearms industry to be there, have a seat at the table, if not own the table, then, well, that's how we do it, by keeping an eye on the future. So thanks to Rob for jumping in and being part of these. He's been pretty consistent throughout the year, joining in. And as this, like I say, I sent out a lot of links. So we'll just go around. Santee, final plugs, any thoughts, anything we might have missed or kind of cut you off or went past or anything?
No, this was great. It gave me a lot of good information as far as like how to approach basically my live that I'm planning on doing this weekend. I'm trying to talk to the other side, but on the internet. I don't know how that's going to go, but this has made me think about how I need to approach it. So I'm glad that you all gave me your insight on, you know, ways to approach it. And I appreciate the invite. I appreciate everybody who gave all good information. And thank you for having me on. Y'all can find me at Santee TV on YouTube.
Right on. And thanks again for joining and for all you're doing over there with, again, fostering and making people aware of community and firearm. Well, community's focused on firearms, but then also just having some fun too. A lot of people take it real seriously, and some people only have fun. So I really enjoy people that have values and focus on that and do it in a way that's fun. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
DJ? Or wait, let me plug Barbecue so that he can't. Barbecue jumped in earlier. He does show every Tuesday and Thursday focused on 2A. Then on Wednesdays, whenever he can, he'll interview female in the 2A realm. He calls it 2A Women Wednesday. And then he does shows on Saturday, having some fun, talking about barbecue and whatnot, and other things. He's involved in quite a few other projects out there. But he had to jump out earlier, I'm guessing, either the kids or internet connections. I know he had some issues with flooding. But this is Thursday. It happens. We do every Second Matters on the 2nd of the month because it's the 2nd of the month. But also when you do it on the 2nd of the month, it's always a different day. Some days it's it could be literally any day of the week, and it's almost never, it can't be like always Tuesday. Like it just randomly happens on a different day usually. And today happens to be Thursday this month, and Barbecue does a show later on this evening. Or wait, are we hitting that show already? It's not for another hour, right?
Another hour.
Yeah. So if you want to check that out, DJ often hangs out there. Now I've sufficiently corked DJ's ability to promote his own show. So now I'll let you promote whatever you want or say whatever you want. Same thing. Did we cut you off, or did we miss any topics that were relevant?
No, and I could go for hours on those that weren't even. So all y'all, be safe, have fun, carry your guns and rock.
Yeah, well, I'm about to let DJ go, and then I start drinking, and then he's like, done. I'm like, all right, well, so took a minute to come back from the mic. So anyway, Denny Smeggy, you got anything to throw out there?
Yeah, just one last thing, and then a quick plug. So I do want to say, I don't know if you guys hit it or not, but specifically this month and the upcoming weeks, you know that all these bills are getting introduced after all the craziness. And, even if it feels like yelling against the wall, please go write your people, your senators, your representatives, state level, federal, all that stuff. Let them know where you stand and how you expect them to vote down, assault weapons ban and background checks and all the other things that got introduced within the past 48 hours or whatever. And then the other thing is, check out my channel for random Smeggy Cave live chats. We always talk about guns in 2A. And hopefully I'll have that kid on that I was talking about who's kind of middle of the road, and maybe we can try and convince him to be a little more 2A supportive. And I look forward to actually trying to do that, because I do it in my everyday life and with real people, but it's fun to try and do it on the internet as well.
Well, so is that your thing? Or am I cutting you off?
No, I'm done. That's all I had to say.
All right. Well, I want to say thanks for doing your Smeggy Cave, because that's a way to let people, lets the new groups, whoever the new people are who are not yet active, realize that there's lots of different ways you can be active. You could sit there playing with your dog, hosting off your phone, and letting other people in and having a conversation, sparking ideas, and being interesting and actually relevant, like legit, like it's authentic, right? There's no way he's faking. That's not a CGI dog. So appreciate you doing that, and then being around for so dang long. Pretty much outdates most of the people. Well, I think everybody watching here. Let us know if you're older than Smeggy in the 2A. But as far as that last part you said there, I guess I was going to play devil's advocate a little bit and say, what if you got somebody on who's middle of the road or anti-even, and instead of trying to go at it to change their mind, what if you just said, can you give me your position? And then do nothing more than learn from them. What's your position? And let them tell you your position, because what you're going to learn then is what their position is, for one, right? And maybe, I think we all think we know what the other side is because we think what we've been told what the other side is, right? Well, how do we know what the other side is really thinking, or an individual on the other side might be thinking, right? So we can learn, but then we can also know what they're not paying attention to. And I think a lot of the problems we got is somebody has whatever, let's say they got a hang up. Let's say they don't like pistols for some reason, right? They like revolvers, they hate pistols, whatever. And everybody's allowed to have whatever hang up they want. But they don't realize that by hating all pistols, they're also hating something that's, like self-defense or something. So, maybe it's just a matter of understanding what they really, truly give a shit about or care about. And then you figure out a way that you can have a better conversation with the next person. So in other words, instead of trying to convince them or change their mind, you can just say, hey, thank you. I really appreciate the insight. And, let's have another conversation sometime. Now they've said it. And what would happen if you gave someone what's the word? Like a place, the time to say something, to present their position and not challenge them. Just let them present their damn position and not be a dick about it or be like, ooh, what about this? What about this? Aha, gotcha. Right. Like not be any of that. Just be like, okay, appreciate it. But maybe like, can you clarify this? Okay, thank you. Right. So you literally just absorb it, offer that to your audience, you give them a chance to say their position. I can't tell you how many times. One of the reasons this is effective, having these real authentic live conversations instead of scripted garbage, right? Programming, is because you can realize stuff as you're saying it, right? So as you ask someone to offer their position to you, not to sell you on it, just to offer it to you, then they're going to have a chance to say it. And they may have never put all their thoughts out together in one place. And as they assemble that, they realize something. Or they figure out their stuff doesn't quite touch. It doesn't quite add up. They've been given a lot of things, but they don't really fit together the way they thought they would. And when they have difficulty or effectiveness presenting it to you, maybe they figure out something in that. So maybe you've given them something and you've learned something. And then each conversation doesn't have to be what was the score at the end? Did you change your mind? Just throwing that out there. I don't even know if that's devil's advocacy or just saying stuff.
No, that's definitely a good point. I mean, and some of the things that you said, I think I was definitely already planning on doing. You know me, I'm not a yell and fight type of person, so obviously I'll let them speak their mind. But I do like the idea of not instantly pushing back. At least let them put all their thoughts, out there. And yeah, that's kind of like what the Socratic method or whatever. Right? You're like, you ask them questions and they figure it out themselves. Like instead of just telling the people like you're wrong because of this, you let them go down the road of well, then what happens? And then what happens? And then they figure it out for themselves. It sticks a lot more when they think they're the one that came up with the idea. And that might be over multiple conversations. So that's definitely, I will keep that in mind. That is a very good suggestion. If he ever gets back to me, even, I mean, I don't even know. He never reached out last night, but maybe he was busy. But I'll do it with someone else. Anyone's always welcome. If someone stumbles across this, everyone's always welcome in the Smeggy Cave if you disagree with me or whatever, and I'll give you a place to speak your mind.
What's this if-then statements all about?
Yeah, because Smeggy was talking about the Socratic method. If-then statements. That's the way. It's a simple approach to logic.
Well, for a minute there, I forget when it was, maybe it was more like a couple of months, we were paying a lot of attention to that whole de-escalation and that Rob had brought up maybe, I don't know, an hour ago, something like that. But that made me think of Woods and a project. Was it me and Woods and Smeggy, or was it somebody else involved too? But we had some project where we were going to attempt to, part of this hack in 2A, trying to offer an activist a set of tools so that you don't have to know everything. You just have to know where the tools are, right? Like we were talking about this one time about like what good is going to a class to learn how to do something if you're not going to do everything the class teaches you. Mainly a lot of times school is just to show you like, here's all the different tools that you might need and here's how you use each one. Now go do whatever you're going to do in the world, but now you know how to use all the tools. So as activists, do you know how a newsletter works? Do you know how how effective it is to call a representative? If you can't call a representative, do you realize you can help people that are interested in doing that? And then together as a team, you can become both more effective, right? There's like this kind of stuff. And part of that was to give people insight and information on how to be, to do all this activism stuff. Part of it was to, what's it called? Like to describe arguments so that we could know, I don't know, just, how arguments work and how, or I think somebody had said it earlier, like how to tell, was it Rob, how to gain insight to the person's approach or the person's point of view so that you can have more effective communication with them, right? Like communication is just something that can be measured and can be studied and all that. So you listen to people who measure it and study it, and they give you some ways that you can be more effective. And that's sort of the deal, right? Like talk about the different arguments and the different logics and what's Wood saying, find and explain logic fallacy so that we can, so again, we don't become English teachers, but at least we can understand when somebody's using this type of logic or that type, and we can, I guess be better to not be wasting our time, like Rob was saying. Like if somebody's not going to use 9mm, then why try to sell them a gun that shoots 9mm? Let's talk to them about shotguns. I'm trying
finding and explaining the logic fallacy in each discussion. It takes a little bit of practice. It also takes a knowledge base. So he's also Woods was also out there, with the sibilants, talking about ethos, pathos, logos, and so that folks get it, without having to look that up. Ethos is at the top of a communication triangle. It's about credibility. It's about ethics. It's about how solid and accurate your stuff is. Logos is just logic. So LOGO, logic, right? Pathos, that's the emotion. That's the feelings that people have. That's, borrowing that quote from DM Foss again. You can't debate emotion. Those three things. Yes.
So people that don't know, DJ can be verbose often. So people will go around and to be like, anyway, DJ has a reputation of being verbose. Let's just put it that way without getting more into it. You just had the most succinct definition of those three words that I've ever heard, ever, period. And I can't even tell you how many discussions we've had about them three words, and no one ever was able to just, bam, say that's what those three words are. And in that such a way that like, oh, snap, now I totally get. Wow. Anyway, well done.
I'm glad it finally came along. And I stepped to the side. Thank you.
Oh, don't do that, Woods. That's that horrible interviewer. So what you're really saying is that you hate everybody, blah blah blah.
Well, no, if you do it wrong, but if you if you show that you understand what their point is, then they understand. They see that it's at 60%. Like they see that you have actually listened to them, right? And now you can actually have some communication. They might actually start listening to, oh, if this person's listening to me, maybe I should listen to what they're actually saying here. And oh, okay, the consequences of this is it's affecting law-abiding people only, and then a knee-jerk reaction, blah blah blah. So
I know. I was just making a joke on that really bad interview where the person literally restated everything the exact opposite of what the dude just said.
oh, I missed that. Okay. I wanted to then awkwardly end it with I appreciate everybody stuck around. If you're listening to this live, then very much, because there was an interview with Tony and Clover over there. It looked like it got more likes than this one, so it was definitely a better interview, but it was probably more interesting because it's just those two guys talking to each other about Tony's projects more than likely, and Tony's a lot of fun. So appreciate the people that did join in and participate in the conversation here live, and of course the panel. Am I missing anybody? Rob and Barbecue. Nobody else was in here that I'm missing, I don't think. If I am, I really apologize. But then again, to the people that are joining live, but if you're listening to this in the future, you might be, because I'm going to start putting this out on the podcasts again. This Every Second It Matters does have its own podcast channel or whatever, and it's been a while since I've blown the dust off all of those old pipes, but I stuck the Daily Gun Show out there, so I'm going to do the same with this one. So they'll be on iHeartRadio and Stitcher and I don't know, Podbean and all those things, so that the audio version of this will get out there. So if you're out there listening to this, look in the description. There'll be links to Santee TV's YouTube channel, to Barbecue's channel, to Tusk's website, and then Every Second Matters channel. I don't think DJ and Smeggy care about dropping links. But I just wanted to say again at the end here to reiterate, thanks to everybody for sticking around. But really, this is a project to create awareness. And I really do appreciate that we were able to keep the topic not on all the chaos and stuff that's happening out there, but on focused on, or at least topics, adjacent to, or actually specifically about activism and doing specific things. But there's, in the past, I wish I could say every chat was like this, but that would, there are definitely kernels or gold nuggets out there. If you're ever listening to a back issue, so to speak, or an old version of somebody's Every Second Matters, and you find something cool, use the comments where you're watching it and use the timestamp feature. You can put in, for example, if it's 6 minutes and 30 seconds, somebody said something interesting or worth putting a comment in there, you can type, at least in YouTube and probably in other platforms, like 6:30, and that'll create a link right to the 6 minute, 30 second mark. And you can then put in, like, this was a great point, thanks for addressing it, or like this, I have a problem with the way you said this, or whatever. And if you do that, one, it gives them a comment in the platform. Two, it puts that highlight in there, that focus on that moment in the show. They may take your comment and just copy and paste it into the description of the video, and then that way it's there for everybody. So you've created a permanent feature, extra feature of that video, a chapter, so to speak. Now, it's also possible that the content creator will find that place that you created the timestamp and decide that's a good place to splice out a short piece or a snippet of that longer piece. And now you've helped get that pertinent information out there. And that's just being a viewer and somebody who knows how the software, works and stuff. And that's what it's all about, is just, being aware of that kind of stuff, sharing that kind of stuff with each other, having conversations to learn how to work the software, to create content, to understand how platforms work and stuff. But when necessary, when it's all hands on deck, I appreciate the people that are able to focus their attention. They're able to alert their reach, their audiences, their fan base, the people that they have awareness with in the industry, the people that they have relationships with, and their peers, the other content creators out there, offering things that are that can be taken and used by others, people like Foss, right? We got Foss out there who's constantly making stuff for other people to use. Ghost does that all the time, making logos for people, helping people with their getting their branding and stuff, because he's able to do that. I'm missing people I know, Clover and everybody else who does these kind of things. That's the stuff that happens in the between times, so that when we need it, we can all get on focus, and we don't have to all be on the same lockstep. But when we all come to alert at the same time, it's just like that dog right there. If we're all a bunch of dogs and some of them start perking their ears up, guess what happens to all the other dogs? They start perking their ears up and going, what's up with that? They're smelling the breeze to see what's up. And I appreciate the people that have ability to do that and have the balls to do it or whatever. There's tons of that happening out there, and that's what I'm going to conclude with. Thanks to everybody that does it, but also appreciate the people that are doing it. DJ talked about going outside of his, I'm going to say, wheelhouse, just kind of looking around. He enjoys, walking down the street and finding a new club that he hasn't been in, and walking in and finding out what the vibe of that club is, and then maybe hanging out and maybe going to it, sometime next month to see how it's different. But, what I'm saying, like going out and experiencing stuff. What was I getting at? We have activists out there that are doing amazing things. So the conversation, I can tell you, as somebody who's been paying attention for a while, the conversation has changed. The way that the antis do things, and the volume, and the way that they're casual, the way that they're phoning it in, all of that speaks volumes. Their actions speak volumes to how effective the work has been of the people that I'm focusing on. And I guarantee you, I'm not focusing on everybody. So that's just what I want to leave everybody with. Value your voice, value what you're able to do by simply interacting in the platforms, the good ones. Guntube.org, run by Mike, a dude in South Carolina who for years has made no money to create a place where the Second Amendment lives. And then there's places like UGETube up in Utah, spending tons of money to make a place where the First and Second Amendment can live. Utilize those platforms. And when you're out there watching people on those platforms, give them feedback, right? Utilize those platforms too. They're just like the big giant ones, because when you thumb something up and you make a comment on one of those platforms, it's worth 1,000 comments over here on YouTube. One comment over here might be one of 16 or 30 or even 300 on a big channel. On another platform, one comment is like a massive endorsement that video has been watched by another human. On platforms with a lot of bots and stuff, that's a lot. So you don't have to necessarily be the content creator or a content creator or even have ambitions to create content to be a massively useful activist out there. And this is the time for all hands to be on deck. If you've been in the game for a while, being a mentor and a life coach to the activists that are out there today who don't realize how important what they're doing is, there's people out there that are taking things in stride that took forever. Other people took forever to gain the skill set or the strength to be able to do what Santee does when she doesn't even realize it. It's crazy. So what you can do as an old timer to support the people that are able and doing the stuff that you can't do as an old timer is invaluable. There's nobody else that's going to support the people that are doing what's right and doing what's working. So anyway, I'm encouraging everybody, all hands on deck. You don't have to run around like your head's cut off. Be effective, be ninjas. We're ending it. Thanks to the people that showed up, and whoever didn't, I wish you would start showing up to these things. They're better when